You're listening to Arizona Good Business Radio, featuring unique stories with leaders who believe the community is a central part of doing business. Join us on the journeys of entrepreneurs, local businesses, and champions of Arizona who believe working together, we can build stronger communities.
Welcome to Arizona Good Business Radio, featuring leaders in the Arizona business community, working to build a lasting impact throughout our state through doing good business. I'm your host, Thomas Barr, Vice President of Business Development at Local First Arizona. If you don't know us, we're a statewide organization advocating for and celebrating local businesses. We are the largest local business coalition in North America. We provide resources to thousands of small businesses while raising awareness of the benefits of building a strong local economy. And today, I'm super thrilled to have my friend and business colleague, Lindsay Leavitt, shareholder and attorney from Gallagher and Kennedy. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thank you. Good to be here. I've listened to so many podcasts over the past few years. This is my first time ever being on one. So,
okay.
Yeah.
There we go. So, I mean, I feel like you're a pro if you listen. You know what makes a good one from the most part. What makes
Why are you setting me up to fail already, Tom? Why are you doing this to me?
Well, I know this is a long time coming. We've wanted to have you on the show for a very long time, and I'm super thrilled we finally got it scheduled. But let's start with the basics. I know that you are not a native Arizonan. You are from your family's from Canada.
I'm an immigrant.
You're an immigrant to Arizona. And you've been practicing law for many years here. Tell us a little bit about how you got into law and serving small businesses in Arizona.
Sure. Like every Canadian kid growing up, my dream was to become an American.
Okay.
And so when I graduated from the University of Alberta with a degree to be a high school history teacher and phys ed teacher.
Very specific.
The most natural course of, in my career was to then go to law school, obviously. Okay. And so I moved to Arizona. I married an Arizona woman. I've got 3 Arizona children, and I'm still on a green card. I should probably get citizenship because you just never know. If I commit a felony, I might get deported. And so you just never know when you're going to commit a felony.
At least you have good legal representation.
Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly. So, but I came to law school, and my first job out of law school, I was doing employment law, representing police unions and public sector labor organizations. I really liked employment law. And I eventually lateraled over to a business law firm and have been doing employment law and business litigation for the last 15 years here in Arizona.
Cool.
Most of my clients are small and mid-sized business owners that aren't quite big enough to have their own in-house lawyer.
Yeah.
But they're big enough to have legal issues that they need help with.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like the reason we've crossed paths is because of your partnership and relationship with Kimber, our founder, who you've worked with in and out of several different things over the years to support us at Local First, and have always just been a trustworthy person that we've been able to rely on. One of the things is I feel like when people hear attorney, they hear lawyer, they hear legal, it either sends them straight to sleep or they go running for the hills. So,
or they have PTSD from the one time they got cornered with a lawyer at a party and he wouldn't stop talking, or they hired a lawyer and it was a disaster.
There you go. There you go. So we can think about all the negative aspects of it, but you bring a really warm, inviting presence to the businesses we've introduced you to that I've seen you work with. What though are, from your perspective, those reasons that people do run for the hills, or try to avoid it when it really might be something that you should be more proactive about in getting familiar with?
Yeah, most of the clients that I've worked with, they've had bad experiences with lawyers in the past, and those typically stem from one of 2 things. Either the lawyer doesn't do a good job of responding, the work is not done well or on time, but most of the issue comes down to it was just too expensive. And the lawyer quoted them an estimate of $3,000, and then they got stuck with a bill for $9,500. And the lawyer said, whoops, I bill by the hour. This is what I spent. And the client said, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And it's a disaster. And then the client promises to never hire a lawyer again.
Mm-hmm. And obviously there is a more of a higher cost to have representation or to work with an attorney, especially when you're growing a business. But what advice would you give to smaller companies that are in that space? You come across this all the time, right? Either businesses land in that terrible situation and they desperately need something, or they are, hit with a bill and just didn't really expect it.
Yeah, what I've learned in my career after having made mistakes, obviously, is that I talk about cost and budget on every single phone call with every single client on every single matter. We say, hey, here's what your issue is. Here's what I can do to fix it. Here's how much it's going to cost. You tell me whether this is the path you want me to take. And then I send a follow-up email saying, again, here's what we spoke about. Here's your issue. Here's my solution. Here's the cost. And so my goal is my clients never get a bill at the end of the month and have sticker shock.
Sure.
And what we've been doing with my firm and Local First Arizona is we're trying to bring more affordable legal services to that small business community. And unfortunately, most lawyers and most law firms are chasing bigger clients, bigger ticket items, higher hourly rates. And the emphasis is bigger, 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 more expensive, more expensive, more expensive. But what I'm kind of focusing on, and what we've been talking about for a few years with Local First, is instead of going bigger, we're thinking smaller. We're thinking, how do we provide affordable legal services to small businesses? We know that there's many pro bono and low bono programs for individuals who need legal services. But what about small businesses that are just barely making ends meet, but they need legal services? And so we've talked about a flat fee legal service menu that we've created and we're offering to Local First members that I think hopefully will become the new future of practicing law.
Cool. And where does that come from? You have a very natural passion for supporting locally owned businesses. It would probably, I don't know if it'd be easier, but it seems more lucrative to go after some big fish, get a huge client, bill lots of hours as much as you can, rather than try to support the community that you're within. Where does that come from?
Well, let me be clear. I'm not turning down big lucrative clients either. Okay. I'm not telling them no, sorry, I'd rather go for less lucrative. But
sure.
But I grew up in a family of small business owners. Like my dad, when he was 45 years old, and I remember this because I was just starting high school, he had worked his way up as a forklift salesman at a forklift dealership. And when he was 45, he had the opportunity to buy out his boss. And so one day he was the salesman, he was an employee signing the back of the check. And the next day he was the owner of this dealership signing the front of the check, right? And I just remember the stress that caused him and the burden he felt for all these employees. And so I grew up in a home raised by small business owners. My wife has been a small business owner for a while. My older brother is a small business owner. And so I just see kind of the struggles, the grind, and it just makes me be like, we've got this legal skill, but for whatever reason, small businesses have been priced out of receiving it. Let's figure out a solution, my firm and Local First to solve that issue.
Cool. And I know recently we had a really well attended and really interesting workshop that we did with you, where you dug into some of those pitfalls that you see across the spectrum, different industries, things that are common that you see small businesses face time and time again. Without going in a deep dive into those things, is there anything that rises to the top that you see pretty consistently among the small business community?
Definitely. So the first legal issue that literally every business in America faces is employment law stuff. And anyone who hires an employee has the need for employment legal advice at some point. And so from what I've seen, just anecdotally, because I get a list of every lawsuit that's filed in Maricopa County and Arizona Federal Court every day. And anecdotally, what I've seen is employment litigation and employment disputes, especially wage and hour disputes, where employees are suing their employers or suing their former employers for unpaid wages, unpaid commissions, unpaid tips, whatever it is. That is the fastest growing area of litigation that I'm seeing in Arizona. And so,
is that new, or is that been consistent over the years?
I think over the past few years, it has grown exponentially. I'm not exactly sure why. I think there are more and more plaintiffs' attorneys who are seeing that money can be made representing one or more employees in wage and hour litigation. And a successful employee in a wage and hour case gets their attorney's fees paid by the employer.
I see.
So plaintiffs' employment attorneys are more willing to take on those cases, knowing that if they win, their attorney's fees get paid. So
Sure. Got it. And why is it for the small business then that they run into so many issues? And you said America, not just, I mean, this is a nationwide challenge.
The difficult part about employment law, but also the part that's the most fun for me as a lawyer, is it's constantly changing. And every time there's a new presidential administration that comes in, they swap out the old administration's folks that are on the EEOC or on the National Labor Relations Board, and they put in their people who oftentimes have a much different approach for employer-employee relations and the power structure there. And so there's constantly new updates, regulations, revisions, interpretations that are coming out from these federal agencies, oftentimes every 4 years, that then trickle down and influence and affect and impact the lives of small business owners.
Got it.
And small business owners, like my dad and my brother and my wife, they wear so many hats, right? They're the chief sales office, chief marketing office. They're doing accounting. They're doing everything. And it's hard enough for me as a full-time employment lawyer to keep up with the changes in employment law.
Yeah.
It's nearly impossible for business owners too.
Yeah.
And that's why it's easy to get out of step with the latest updated employment law. And oftentimes they get dinged in court by it.
We see that too. And I'm sure those listening are, resonating with everything being said, but we see that in so many different areas. There was a workshop, somewhat of a workshop we put on a few years ago with an insurance broker that we work with here, David DiLorenzo, because
D-Lo.
Everybody knows
the D-Lo. Yes.
What he was saying, he came to us and said, hey, look, the liquor laws are changing. There's, different rules and laws that those working bars and restaurants need to follow and be aware of. And that can change every year, depending on the legislature or whatever gets passed through. But bartenders, restaurant managers, workers, that sort of thing, they're not required to, pass their liquor license test, whatever it's called, to work in the restaurant every 2 years. So you could have a change in existing law, yet, be not non-compliant. Your whole staff could not know, what they're supposed to be reading, doing, whatever. And so he brought together, 3 different restaurants and packed a room with every single employee so that they could update them on all the new liquor laws. So I feel like that happens all the time, not just in employment, but in insurance and in all these different, things that you don't know.
Here's a really basic example. So there's the National Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and it's a civil rights law. But then every state has their own version of the ADA. And then a lot of cities have their own regulations when it comes to accessibility for individuals with disabilities. And there was an individual, a serial plaintiff, who filed 2,000 ADA lawsuits 5 or 6 years ago here in Arizona.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
And I defended maybe 400 of those cases. And what I found is that my clients are being sued because their accessible parking sign was 3 inches lower than the federal standard.
That's right.
But the city of Mesa's accessible parking sign standard was different. And in order to get a certificate of occupancy from the city of Mesa, their accessible parking sign had to be X number of inches off the ground, but couldn't be too high. And so the city's ordinance and the federal law was totally different. And you couldn't be in compliance with both.
Wow.
And so it was frustrating for those businesses, and enterprising plaintiffs' lawyers will find those loopholes and exploit them. Yeah.
It's hard at the end of the day when you're just trying to run a business, raise a family, get back to the community as best you can.
I find that most small business owners want to do the right thing. None of them are trying to screw over their employees or take advantage of them.
Right.
Most of the time, if there are any sort of violations, it's accidental. It's just a lack of information or education, or because hiring a fancy employment attorney has been too expensive.
Well, like you said, accessibility to the resources, to hire a legal expert to provide you the right information. So I want to talk about what we've worked out with Local First. And we're not the experts in what businesses are needing or seeing, but a lot of the times I see the, latter end of an issue. We had a business not too long ago who ended up closing. And while they were in their business, had invested in some infrastructure, something like a water heater or something like that. And so when they were moving out, they decided to take the water heater with them. And on their lease, it said any investments in fixtures and listed the type of infrastructure upon the closing of the lease, like that belongs to the property owner, sort of, so they'd give back. They were out however many $1,000, whatever. So part of what we worked on is to get ahead of some of those things, those trademarks, those leases, that sort of stuff. So tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what we put together and why you think it's important for businesses to know about it.
Sure. Yeah. So in my opinion, the legal industry, and I've only practiced for 15 years, but it seems like the legal industry hasn't really changed in like 115 years. You hire a lawyer, they bill you by the hour, they send you a bill at the end of the month, you pay the bill. It seems like not the most efficient way of doing business. And the reason why is because if you come to me and say, okay, I need you to do this legal project. And I say, I think, okay, this is going to take me about 8 hours. This will take me a full day. And then it only takes me 2 hours. Well, you're only paying me for 2 hours. And then I still have to go out and find 6 more hours of legal time. So lawyers aren't incentivized to be efficient with their time. And they're incentivized. And I think most lawyers do a good job, and we're trying to be ethical and all that, but we're not incentivized to be as efficient as possible because we get paid by the hour. And so what if we flipped that on its head and kind of disrupted that and said, you know what, let's incentivize lawyers to be as efficient as possible. And let's create a program where businesses never get sticker shock by the bill that they get for the services that they hired for. And so we created this flat fee a la carte service menu where I'll read some of the items, but in the employment law realm, we said, hey, you want to lay off an employee and you're concerned that they'll bring legal claims against you. So you need a severance agreement, something that says we'll pay you 2 weeks severance if you release all of your legal claims against us, so we don't ever have to worry about you coming back to us.
Sure.
And if you called me up and said, hey, I need to do that, I'd say, okay, I need a retainer. I'm going to bill by the hour. And you say, well, what's the cost? And I'd say, well, it depends. It could be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours. Like business owners don't want estimates. They want line items that they can plug into their budgets, right? Yeah. And so we said, okay, we'll do a severance agreement for $550. That's it. Pay us that flat fee up front. We'll get you a severance agreement. Boom, we're done. And we're doing it within 24 hours.
Cool.
An employment agreement. We'll review your employee handbook. All these things are kind of flat fee. Other ones, and again, not everything in law can be flat fee. I can't flat fee everything. It's like, hey, I've got a complex antitrust case. You're like, you know what? I'm not going to charge you. We're not doing a flat fee on that. But filing and preparing a federal trademark, reviewing your commercial lease, and a 30-minute phone call with a lawyer. Those are things we can price out and do a flat fee for. And my firm also offers, personal injury and family law issues that we offer flat fee services for as well. So those are types of things where a small business is like, I know exactly how much I'm going to pay. I know exactly what I'm going to get for it. This seems like a good deal. Let's do it.
Very cool.
So that's what we're trying to do.
And I love it because, I hear so many horror stories and all these businesses dealing with things all the time. And while it may seem like a larger investment than you were expecting, it, not only the potential future cost of what you're going to have to deal with, but the time, like the time that I see businesses stress and go through the anxiety of dealing with a legal issue is more taxing than the bill at the end of the day. Right. And it's exhausting to see so many businesses go through that.
Yeah. I always tell my clients, like, listen, you've been sued. Okay. So there's the cost, the actual bill, that it's my bill and the cost to get out of this lawsuit. But there's also the emotional toll and the time. Like, what's your time worth? Like, is this going to be a good return on your investment to fight this case to the death? Probably not. I seem like I'm very critical of the legal industry, and I think I actually am, because the legal industry, like litigation, is built for Fortune 500 companies fighting over tens of millions of dollars. That's when it makes sense. It's not for two businesses that have a breach of contract dispute for $60,000. That's not what the legal system is designed for, and oftentimes it's not a good return on your investment to hire a lawyer and fight, and before you know it, you wake up and only the lawyers ended up winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you talked about employment law. We talked about a few different things, but is there anything new and emerging that's affecting small businesses right now that you think that they should be thinking about?
The big one is the Corporate Transparency Act, the
Mm.
CTA. That's something that I think a lot of us have heard, but maybe not really
Yeah.
gotten the full story on. Can I just give a quick 1-minute spiel?
Yeah, do it.
All right. So it's
Sounds boring, but make it
very,
fun.
you know what? I don't think I can. So how about I just do the boring
Yeah,
version?
let's do it.
So the CTA was implemented and went into effect earlier this year. And what it basically says is the government's like, hey, we're having concerns that there's a bunch of financial crimes going on in American businesses. A lot of businesses are fronts for money laundering, funding terrorism, that kind of scary stuff that local businesses in Arizona are like, what are you talking about? Like, I run a dry cleaner and I'm not funding terrorism, whatever. But because of that, the federal government said, we need to know who owns every business that operates in America. And so
simple question though, like, how do they not know that already?
Well, there are certain states, Delaware, I believe Nevada and others, where it's not required to disclose on any sort of public record who owns the business.
Okay.
In Arizona, you form a business, you have to file something with the Arizona Corporation Commission.
Sure. Okay.
And then you can click on it and it says, hey, here's the members and here's the managers.
You
But
can
it
see
can-
documents and all the things.
But
Okay.
it can also say, oh, this trust owns this business. You're like, well, who owns the trust? I have no idea.
Okay.
And so Delaware is anonymous, and a lot of businesses are formed in Delaware for various tax and other reasons, money laundering reasons. No, I'm joking. But so the federal government's like, who owns these businesses? And so every business in America needs to disclose to the federal government.
I believe it's the Treasury, right?
The Treasury,
Yeah,
Department
yeah.
of Treasury. Who owns who has at least a 25% ownership interest in the business, and who
Okay.
has ownership or operational control of the business. And so the government can say, we just want to know who is running these businesses
Got
that
it.
operate in America. But it affects everyone. And if you don't file your disclosure, you can do it online. It's relatively straightforward. If you don't file that disclosure by January 1st of 2025, you start getting fined $500 a day, up to $10,000. And you could spend up to 2 years in jail. So strongly, if there's only one thing that anyone remembers from this podcast, it's file your CTA disclosure before the end of the year. Trust me, it's going to be worth the hour it takes to do it,
Sure.
and it'll be off your plate.
So not to get into the weeds, but what about new LLCs formed after January 1st, 2025? Do they have any like probation period?
They have
Like,
probationary
yeah.
periods, but they also need to disclose.
Got it.
So by the end of the year in which your company's formed, you got to disclose it.
And this is for any entity, not just an LLC, but sole proprietorships, everything?
I don't know if sole proprietorships.
Okay.
But certainly formal not sole proprietorships, my understanding, because they're just people that run businesses as DBAs. But entities that are formed need to disclose it.
We won't get into your opinion on whether or not you should form an LLC or a sole prop, but
I
that's for another
strongly
show.
advise not doing sole proprietorships for a variety of different legal reasons. But yes.
Sure. Yeah. No. Well, thank you. We're super excited for you to be on the show and for all you're doing for local businesses and partnering with Local First. Is there anything that you're excited for in 2025 in the space of working with us or being in Arizona working with local businesses at all?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this flat fee program takes off.
Cool.
I think it has a lot of potential. I'm not saying it's so cliche to be like, I'm disrupting the industry. Like, I'm not, but I'm just offering an ability for small businesses who otherwise don't feel like they have access to good quality legal representation. I'm excited to kind of promote this, get it out there, and hope that a lot of these small businesses can get these services that they need. You know, my dad would always say growing up, and I never understood when I was a teenager, but now I do because I'm 40 and I have 3 kids, but like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if you can pay a lawyer $500 to draft a good severance agreement that your employee will sign so that you're not dealing with a discrimination lawsuit that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars down the road, it's worth it.
Sounds like a smart man.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if we ended the show without giving praise and thanks to Gallagher and Kennedy. There's not so many local law firms that have been around like they have for so long. Can you tell us a little bit about the firm and how long they've been in Arizona?
Sure. It's been around since 1978, and it's we have just over 60 lawyers. I think 57 of them are here in the Phoenix area. We have 3 in an office in New Mexico. But we are a full-service law firm. Very few law firms cater their legal services both to consumers and to businesses. And one of the reasons I was attracted to move my practice to Gallagher Kennedy a year and a half ago was that it did offer family law, criminal defense, personal injury, those types of consumer services that a lot of people need. And that my clients, their friends, their family, their kids oftentimes end up needing. But we also have an extremely strong and robust business law practice, tax, commercial litigation, real estate, corporate M&A, employment, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a pleasure working there. They're very dialed into the community. A lot of law firms are trying to grow bigger and expand outside of Arizona. And we're trying to go deeper into Arizona. We represent kind of big corporations like the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Arizona Cardinals, big mining, Freeport-McMoRan.
Okay.
But we also represent startups, mom and pop shops, and kind of everything in between. So
super cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Lindsay, thanks for being here. I know you're a super busy guy doing a lot of different things, but
I'm very important, Thomas. Don't forget that. Okay?
So important. Yeah. So important. But appreciate your time. Appreciate you being on the show. Anything to leave people with?
No, that's it. Just Corporate Transparency Act, get that disclosure done. And then if you have any questions about the flat fee service, feel free to contact me or Local First and we'll help you out.
Right on. Well, we'll leave your info in the show notes and encourage everyone, even if it's not Lindsay, be looking at the legal aspects of your business, be thinking about it, get ahead of it. We hope you listening were inspired today, listening to a local leader working to leave a legacy right here in Arizona through doing good business. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Phoenix Business Radio X, for hosting us and all of our legacy partners at Local First, including Gallagher and Kennedy. Big shout out. This is Thomas Barr from Local First AZ, reminding you that if we want to build a better Arizona, we need to connect deeply with the local businesses that make us proud to call this place home.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Good Business Radio with Local First Arizona, where entrepreneurs and local businesses come together to build stronger communities. We hope your business is inspired to take part in building a better Arizona.